This is a very sad occasion. Uh, what do I think about it? Well, if I can go back a little in time, you have to remember that the very origins of European integration after the Second World War, there was a great debate between what were called the Federalists and the Functionalists. And the idea of the Federalists was, look, the war has demonstrated all of the horrors that nationalism leads to. And we need a new Europe, a Europe which is a federal Europe by definition, and which can reorganize and rebuild from scratch. This is an opportunity because Nazism and fascism have discredited nationalism to such an extent that people are ready to do something new, such as a unified Europe. The functionalists, on the other hand, said, yes, we also want a unified Europe, but we have to remember that Europe has several hundred years of experience as national states. And it's very hard for people who have been brought up to learn in the schools that they are members of a nation, to learn national literature, national language, national history, to suddenly give that up in favor of Europe. What we can do is take advantage of the situation that has arisen from the war, the destruction that has left the necessity to rebuild the economies. And at that time, the European states all the Western European states, that is, had governments which were liberal, free market, free enterprise governments, and they believed that opening up a system of European economic integration would be the right way to start because there they would have agreement. They wouldn't have opposition from the old nationalisms because most people didn't realize that economic integration could and for the functionalists would lead to integration on a political level. And hence Europe would be born out of a starting point of economic integration, which everyone could agree upon. This argument went on for some time. The attempt to create the European defense community, which was destroyed by the French in August of 1954 by a vote of the National Assembly, demonstrated, as far as the functionalists were concerned, that they were right and the Federalists were wrong. They were overly optimistic. And so this led to an ambiguity because in reality, the functionalists also wanted a political unification, but they hoped to attain it by first creating the economic basis where people were so interdependent economically that inevitably they would turn to a unified political system to be able to control and run their economic affairs as well as all other affairs. This is an ambiguity because it always left the question unanswered of how far people really wanted to go. And so you had people supporting European integration who believed that European integration meant cooperation among the states. And there were those who supported European integration, believing that it would lead to a federal United States of Europe. This has never disappeared. And what has happened, of course, is that in spite of the success, and it's been a tremendous success in terms of economic integration, the fact is that there are still many Europeans who believe that they are independent, that they should be independent, and that independence means full sovereignty, full control on a national basis of everything. And so whenever we have a crisis, the way we've had in the last few years, and certainly with the additional external problems of immigration and things like this difference comes to the surface and they say, no, we're going too far. We don't want this. We don't want political union. What we want is national independence, national sovereignty, etc. And those people who say, well, look, we've gone all this way with economic integration. Let's continue, because the fact is that the functionalists were also right, because the economic integration has led to political integration. It's come through the back door rather than through the front door, and people don't often realize it. But the fact is that, there are many, many areas which go beyond economic areas into social areas, into all sorts of policies of the government that are taken care of, or I should say, dealt with on a European basis as well as on a national basis, and more on a European basis, because on a national basis it becomes more and more difficult to do things on your own. The fact is that interdependence is real. And so in order to realize that, obviously we have to see it in action. Well, in any case, coming back to Brexit, this only brings to a head this dilemma, or this basic, let's say, uncertainty or ambiguity in the European scheme. And obviously, it's very difficult and very dangerous, because unfortunately, in this period of crisis, there are all of these so-called Eurosceptics all around Europe. The fact is that many of the more recent entrants into the European Union, especially in Central Europe, have only entered for economic gain and nothing else, and don't really see anything desirable in European federalism or European Union, and hence there are even more Eurosceptics there. So if you say, look, it's possible to live without Europe, economically we're well off and we'll stay well off, which is a nice presupposition. And fortunately, Europe has created a situation in which that could actually happen. Switzerland is a living example. And so the problem is not only a British problem, but unfortunately, it's a problem which affects all of the rest of Europe, and especially those areas where there are strong Eurosceptic populations. And the danger is that there are too many who would like to follow that example. So the danger of a successful Brexit would be, of course, the spread of anti-European or Euroscepticism throughout the rest of Europe. And this could be very dangerous for maintaining the rest of Europe. Otherwise, the exit of Britain alone, if it had no side effects outside of Great Britain, would not necessarily be that bad. The fact is that Great Britain, since its entry, has done everything possible to block any movements toward further political integration in Europe, has created a special status for itself on several occasions, and in reality has done the best to what the Germans call plucking the raisins from the cake, that is to say, take the best and leave the rest for the others. This is, of course, my own feeling. Of course, I would much prefer to see Great Britain stay in, and I hope they do. Fortunately, the vote seems to be moving slightly in the positive direction in the last few days since the assassination of the poor Mrs. Cox, who certainly didn't deserve that end. But in any case, in very short terms, that's my feeling about it. Yes, well, Cameron, has problems in his own party. The Conservatives themselves were split. The Nationalist Party is growing and was calling for leaving the EU. So I think he thought it would be easy to show that he was open and really was following the public's lead, and hence get the Conservatives behind him. But he probably underestimated the dangers. And the fact is that he was probably himself surprised by the growth of the negativists, those who wanted to leave, which went beyond his expectations. That's my reading anyway. I think it was basically to try to keep the party together, because there are many conservatives who would like to leave, and there are many conservatives who would like to stay, which is reasonable, because obviously all of the polls have shown very clearly that among the supporters of staying in the European Union, Obviously, the financial world, industrial world, educated people, younger people, all of these people who see opportunities, all of these people who already take advantage of the opportunities that do exist, and they are also in the conservative camp. On the other hand, you have the conservatives who want to leave, and obviously they look for their own supporters, but for the most part, these are not the same. So on the whole, I think it was an attempt to try to keep the party together, and the expectation was that it would be an easy victory for those who want to stay, which has not turned out to be the case so far. Let's hope it does in the next few days, but so far I think he's been a little bit surprised.
You don't
Well,
think so?
I certainly don't think it's a good strategy. I think it's a disaster because, one, it has only increased the divisions in Great Britain and not resolved any. Two, the danger is there that the no's, the ones who want to leave, could actually win. And then a lot of people are going to be very unhappy. And all of the dangers have been expressed very clearly, but not everyone is sensitive to them. Certainly, the financial world is in very unhappy straits because the city in London has been, of course, a financial capital on a worldwide basis. But if it loses its context within the European Union, it's going to be in bad shape, and they may very well lose a lot of business to Frankfurt or to other commercial centers. Secondly, in trade, yes, it's true British trade is with the European Union has gone down in the last few years, but still it's over 45% of British exports go to the European Union. All right, it's likely that the European Union is not going to throw up big tariff borders to British trade, but still it's important. Also, a lot of the investment that comes into Great Britain from the United States, and a lot of the Americans see as a good investment because they speak English and they are in the European Union. And hence, American products can be sold from Great Britain as European Union products and hence have advantages. And that is true first for standard commodities, but also in the service industries. The service industries obviously are extremely important for Great Britain, and a lot of the foreign investment has been in the service industries, banks and others, insurance companies, etc. All of these, stand to lose, and hence it's not only the fact that you might have more difficulty with trading relations, but you're likely to lose a lot of your investment, and you're likely to see even disinvestment. Companies that have invested in England because they felt they were in the European Union would likely get out. Also, he's raised other internal UK problems, such as Scottish nationalism. The Scots voted to stay in, but they voted to stay in as long as England was or Great Britain was in the European Union. And you've already had several statements by the leaders in Scotland that they would reopen the question of Scottish independence if Britain left. Not only that, you have Northern Ireland, and you have areas where there's a very strong feeling that Britain in the European Union is better than Britain out because there's some control over the British. The fact is that the European Union system is organized in such a way that there are guarantees by the European Court of Justice which have authority also in all of the member states, including Great Britain. That means that you have greater protection for minorities, for people who want to, do their jobs in certain ways, etc. So I think there are many reasons why this was a bad choice, but unfortunately, you have to deal with it. It's coming up in the next few days, like it or not. Well, we already have a number of them. Uh, it's hard to say. Certainly there are Eurosceptics around, and certainly a lot of them would be encouraged by Great Britain's leaving. But I don't think we're at the point yet where they are quite ready to take that step. I might be wrong. Some of them obviously are, but I don't think they would control a majority in those European states, even though they are strong. Certainly, you even have in traditionally solid European states such as France or even Holland and Belgium, groups that want to leave, but I don't think that they will gain a majority, at least in the near future. There's too much at stake. They themselves are in economies which have become more and more dependent on a European basis and are in serious trouble themselves. So they see Europe as an anchor, as a point of assistance, bailouts, if you like, where they're necessary. However, it's hard to say. A lot depends on the continuation of the migration crisis. If they could get control over the immigration, I think that would make a big difference. That's been a tremendous boost to the Eurosceptics. The fact is that Europe has not been able to successfully handle the wave of immigration coming in from North Africa, the Middle East, etc. And this has hurt because it's in part, yes, it's the fear of over-immigration, but in part it's also the demonstration that Europe has not been able really to find a solution to a major problem on a European basis. The European states are so divided on these issues that it makes for a very bad scene generally, and this certainly doesn't help those people who want to maintain Europe or even build up Europe. It's hard to say. It's not impossible that you have movements coming out and becoming stronger, but for the time being, I think that the desire to stay in place is stronger. Even those Eastern European or Central European states there where you have stronger movements, Hungary, Poland, you have, the fear of a return of Russian power. Because remember that the desire of these states to enter into the European Union was in part economic. Yes, they wanted prosperity, etc. They wanted to overcome the problems of their economic past. But the other one was security. The fact was linking up with Europe meant greater security from the old threats in the East, namely Russia. And since Russia has been popping up its head and moved into Ukraine and taken over the Crimea, I think they would think twice about leaving the European Union. More Europe means more security for them. Look, the first thing Europe has to do is to act as Europe. That is to find agreement, to be willing to compromise and to find agreement. It is not easy, but that's the first thing they have to do. The policy that comes from that agreement could be any of a number of types. I think, one, they have to find an agreement on immigration. You can't go on with the system where a few states, such as Italy, Greece, are absorbing hundreds of thousands of immigrants, and the others all close their eyes and they don't want them. You have to spread them out. They have to share them. The immigrants are real immigrants. They are refugees. Sure, there may be some that are phony, but the vast majority are really escaping from tremendous suffering. And Europe has to open up. There are 6 states that have taken practically all of the immigrants that have come in, and others none. And so that is the first thing they have to do, is find agreement and do something about that, which is not easy because all of the states are afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of them for economic reasons and lose jobs, which is stupid because Europe has been suffering from a decline in population, and everyone is worrying about who's going to pay the pensions that all the Europeans are getting, and you need new people coming in. So where they have come in, and Germany has been a tremendous example of that, they have contributed to the economic growth of the countries and obviously helped to make up that deficit in their own population growth. And so that's the first step. The economic question, yes, obviously they've already started moving in terms of reducing the austerity levels. That's important. They're already moving, but they have to move further and faster. They have to do more in terms of investment, to spur investment, to increase investment, to start building up employment where you have huge unemployment spills, especially in the southern part of Europe. So those are the two, I think, immediate key elements: finding agreement, immigration, and investment, especially reducing austerity.